Oh my god, guys, look at how cute this Haro figure is. It has cat ears. And since I am a huge Sailor Moon fan, we're gonna make this into Luna. Inside your kit, you're going to find your manual in both Japanese and English. Usually, aside from the warnings, there's not a lot of English written on the actual instructions, but if you can put together IKEA furniture, you'll have no problem putting together a Playmo. So for our runners, we have polycaps, the main runner, the arm and leg ports, leg covers, the ear covers or flaps, the actual ears and their pivot points, and also the main body. I do have a pair of the Godhead nippers, which are pretty freaking awesome, but the Bandai Spirits are just as good for like half the price. They do dull faster, but for a kit like this, it's not an issue. Generally, when using nippers to cut off parts from your runners, you want to cut with a little bit of the runner still attached to the piece. You can take a file, sandpaper, and file it down and buff it smooth. But since this is just a really simple HaroPla and I'm going to be painting it anyway, it's not that big a deal. I originally wasn't going to use the base, but I remembered that Haro doesn't have a leg to stand on, literally. Sometimes I'll break the runners into smaller pieces. It just makes it easier for me to handle. I actually dropped my nippers on the ground and the blade shattered, so I couldn't cut the ears. I just ripped it off with my hand. But then immediately afterwards, I remembered I had a spare. These are the three main components for the ears. It's actually quite simple. For these little nubs, I didn't even bother with the nippers. I just use my fingers and twist them right off the runners. I actually made a mistake here. I don't need all 8 of those bits to come off the runner right now. I only need to paint 4. I do believe most Playmo is made with injection molding, so that means it's coated with a mold release. You can clean it off with simple water and dish soap, isopropyl alcohol, Windex, vinegar. You can use any of the rough buffers really, you're just trying to remove that top layer. I have this one from Gunpla, it's part of an entire system. You can actually purchase that one from USA Gundam Store I believe, or you can buy it from them directly. So here I just had some alligator clips that I super glued and taped to some barbecue skewers. You're going to take these and clip them on to parts of your pieces that you aren't going to paint or that aren't going to be visible. Like the back, some sides, sometimes even like the pegs. For parts like the ears, where no matter where I clip it, you're going to see parts of like missing paint, the outline of the clip. So I'm going to take some of that Scotch mounting putty. Unlike the usual blue poster tack, the Scotch mounting putty is like really tough. You have to knead it for a good minute or so to get nice and soft. and then use a little bit of piece of that and stick that inside of the ear where the pivot point is going to go, and then attach my clip to that, making sure that once it's clamped in, I'm pressing it in. That just helps the piece stay a little more secure later on. Instead of going out and buying a bunch of expensive clip stands, I just took some old cardboard and PVA glue and made my own, and it kind of looks like it though, but it works. Now for the moon, I have this random box of like O-rings and jump rings for jewelry making with these little fairy things. I thought those would look great on the HaroPla, but they're a little too big, plus I didn't really feel like filing down all that metal. So I did some more digging and I found these old resin inclusions I had gotten from Sophie and Toffee for a project like forever ago. And they had these moves, these tiny ones that are completely solid, and then you have these larger hollow ones. So here I'm just taking some resin I again got from Sophie and Toffee to not only fill in the moon but add more on top, and then just curing it with a UV flashlight. I'm going to start with priming while using my Alkalet 2 black primer and microfiller. For the moon, since it's such a small piece, I'm only pulling halfway back on my airbrush trigger just to make sure it doesn't fly off the tape. So I'm spraying this out at 15 to 20 psi, lightly misting over the surface first and then going along the edges before misting in the middle. This just helps avoid the product getting too thick and pulling along the edges. For the nubs, I'm just spraying the top, but like I said before, I didn't need to spray all 8 of them, only the 4 that would be on the outside. And for the eyes, there's no need for me to spray the entire inner piece, just the part where the eyes are going to be. And for the arm and leg parts, I'm going to be spraying that with the Alkalet Gray Primer and Microfiller. Again, I'm not spraying the back of the pieces because 1, they won't be seen, and they're also going to be connection points, so the paint's going to chip. I really wanted to use that Curacao plane I had gotten from TurboDark, but because my airbrush is really thin, I had a lot of trouble getting that paint out, and I should have just left it as kit color. I was going to go for a more traditional and super saturated gold paint, but while browsing for more Gunpla kits, I stumbled upon Mr. Crystal Colors Topaz Gold and decided to give it a shot. For metallic paints, I like to use a Mr. Color leveling thinner because it dries a little bit slower than a regular thinner, and also it gives the metallic paint pigments more time to move around and settle. This is what the moon looks like after 3 coats of that Topaz Gold paint. Now for the main paint, I'm going to be using this color shifting paint in Blue Raspberry from yeah. I'm going to be using this X20A acrylic paint thinner from Tamiya. It thins the paint down while keeping the binder and particles evenly suspended within the mixture. It's going to be a 2-to-1 ratio of the thinner to paint, and I'm going to take an old paintbrush and just get in there, get it all nice and mixed up, make sure I didn't miss any spots. The paint in both the bottle and the pot is this glimmery, milky mixture, but once you start spraying on that black background, the color is really going to pop. After thinning it, I'm going to be spraying it at 15 to 20 psi. Like just look at that. That is after 1 layer of paint. Like, it's so pretty and sparkly. I'm holding my airbrush about 8 inches away from the piece, and I'm only pulling the trigger back halfway. That way I'm not getting so much paint going through, and I get a nice light even coat of paint. Here's this first layer of paint on the face and body. I mean, you can actually stop right here, go in with a light blue and some white, do some swirls and stars, and you'll have an amazing galaxy paint. For comparison, here's an ear with just a primer, and there's an ear with 2 coats of the color shifting paint. These are the pieces after 5 layers of that paint. It's so shiny. I got a nice even coating of all that paint on here, even though I did so many layers. I'm using this metallic silver from Mr. Hobby for the eyes. I'm not even going to bother with the airbrush. I'm going to take a paintbrush and just go 1 or 2 layers with that. And for the actual eye color, I'm going to take this clear glossy orange from Mr. Hobby again on a paintbrush and just do 2 thick layers of the paint to make sure I get that full color. I'm using bubblegum prices for the inside of the ears and curacao for the arm and leg parts. I had to thin these paints out so much. I was struggling so much to get the nice color saturation on there, and it's mainly because my airbrush was too small. So generally with metallic acrylic paints, the binder is thicker and the pigment particles are way larger, so it's recommended to use an airbrush with at least a 0.5mm needle. Mine is a 0.35, which means I had to thin my paint out. I believe I did a 4:1 ratio, which also meant I had to do at least 6 layers to get that full color saturation. For a clear coat, I'm using the Alcolet 2 Aqua Gloss. I'm going over the pieces in a very light misting. It's recommended to spray at 15 to 20 psi, which I'm doing, but I'm holding the airbrush very far back and I'm only pulling on my trigger halfway. I'm going to do about 3 layers of this just to make sure everything's nice and evenly coated. So now that we're starting to assemble, you can see what I was talking about those nubs that I didn't have to paint. There's so much paint on there, I couldn't get the nubs into place, so I just took a Q-tip, dipped in some of the Alcolet airbrush cleaner. It cuts through both lacquer and acrylic paint excellently, and just clean the nibs off. Also, make sure you wear gloves. Its alcohol base is very drying for your skin. If you get paint on your nails, you have a dirty, gross looking nail for the rest of your video. So now that the 4 nubs are in place, I'm going to be attaching the ports for the arms and legs. They just simply snap right into place, no glue necessary. After assembling the ear, I realized I should have painted the bottom as well, but if I'm not going to be putting the ears down, it won't be that big a deal. Again, this is just a test piece, and look at that, with the ears on, it's already coming together. I mean, it actually kind of looks a bit creepy without the faceplate on. So when putting on the faceplate, I like to go around the piece and make sure all the parts are in order, everything's in where it's supposed to be, everything's clicked in place. And here it is, almost done. Like, look at how shiny that is. That paint is my new favorite. For some of the final details, I'm going to panel line Haro. Haro really only has one, and that's that thick line going around the middle of the figure. I want to take some of this Tamiya panel line color in black and just drop it right in. I'm making sure to go all around the figure in multiple spots. It's okay if it overflows, so I'm going to just take a Q-tip and wipe that off later. To attach the moon, I just took a little spot of Gorilla Glue right on the forehead, but when I attached the moon, I wasn't really happy with the position of it, so I kept fiddling around and moving it, which caused the glue to smear on the surface. Thankfully, because it's so shiny and reflective, you can't really see too much. Overall, I'm really happy with how this turned out, especially for it just being a test piece. I'm already thinking of ways to make this better, from painting the parts of the ears that I missed, to doing a better job of cutting out the pieces and filing down. I'm thinking maybe next time I'll do an Artemis or Diana, or maybe even a Moogle.